The Gemara at the very end of Maseches Megillah, Daf Lamed Aleph Beis, mentions that this week's Seder, Parshas Ki Savo, is supposed to be read on the Shabbos immediately prior to Rosh Hashana. And the reason the Gemara gives relates to the fact that the dominant section of this week's Seder, Parshas Ki Savo, contains what we refer to as the Tochacha, the second presentation of the Tochacha in the Torah. The first is the end of Rosh Hayeshiva and Parshas. This one here in Parshas Ki Savo is very, very long, contains a very terrible and frightening list of all kinds of punishments, which the Torah says will be presented to the Jewish people, unfortunately, should they fail to observe the Torah's laws properly. So we read this Torah. Many people have the practice the Balkari reads the Torah a little bit of a softer voice, a little more quickly, not too soft, not too fast. People have to be able to follow. But the Torah is read a little bit differently because it's such a frightening and terrifying list of punishments. The Gemara indicates that we want to read that before Rosh Hashana because Tichle Shana V'Kiloseh. Let the old year and all its curses and all its tzaras and all its problems disappear. We had a lot of tzaras, a lot of problems this year. We hope Tichle Shana V'Kiloseh. So we want to read the Tocha of Parshas Ki Savo before Rosh Hashana. Rosh Hashana is a new beginning, a new start. So therefore we read the Seder that contains all these punishments and all these terrible predictions, and all of which really have probably come true over the years. And we want to get rid of that, so to speak, before Rosh Hashana, so we read it right before Rosh Hashana. Technically speaking, Rabbi Taubes did point out that that's not exactly our practice. We don't read Parshas Ki Savo on the Shabbos immediately prior to Rosh Hashana, but rather there's a Shabbos in between. It's the second to last Shabbos. We'll read next week Parshas Nitzavim, sometime after Ki Savo, before Rosh Hashana. So we have, as some of the Roshim point out, a little bit of a buffer zone, so to speak, between we don't want to go into Rosh Hashana right away, having read all these terrible things, put us in a bad mood and go right into Rosh Hashana. So we have a little bit of a week in between. So that's our practice. So we do read Parshas Ki Savo before Rosh Hashana. Just like to suggest that maybe there's another reason, again, an auxiliary reason, at least al derech hadrush, homiletically, as to why we should read Parshas Ki Savo before Rosh Hashana. And Rosh Hashana is a strange yontif in many ways, because on the one hand, it's the beginning of the season of the Yomim Noroim, days of awe. Rosh Hashana is a day with a certain amount of fear and concern. It's Yom Adin. Rosh Hashanah is Yom Adin, it's a day of judgment. That's one of the purposes of the shofar, is to remind us that it's a day of judgment. So we're nervous, we're afraid. The person has to go to a court, in a human court. So of course you're afraid a little bit, you're very nervous. So in Rosh Hashanah we also have a sense of yira. It's a day of fear, it's a day of concern and nervousness. On the other hand, it's Yontif. We wish each other a good Yontif, we have Yontif meals, we have Yontif style davening and so on, of course enhanced by other things, but still, Rosh Hashanah is a yontif, according to most authorities, a chiyuv of simcha on Rosh Hashanah. So how do we understand Rosh Hashanah a little bit? On the one hand, it's a day of yira, a day of fear, Yom Noroim. On the other hand, it's a day of simcha. The answer would seem to be that on the one hand, we are concerned for the Yom Hadin, as we should be, and we begin to intensify our efforts in terms of tshuva. On the other hand, we have a certain confidence in our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rav Soloveitchik once pointed out that the phrase Yom Teruah, which means the day of blowing the shofar usually, but is also associated with the word Reya as a friend. Yom Teruah, a day of friendship. So again, there's that tension. There's a little bit of a dual theme, so to speak, to Rosh Hashanah. On the one hand, concern, nervousness is the day of judgment. On the other hand, it's the day of friendship, relation with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What's that going to do with Parshas Ki Savo? The beginning of Parshas Ki Savo, the second section of Parshas Ki Savo, describes a process called Vidui Meiser. Vidui Meiser means that certain times, twice in 7 years, without the details right now, a Jewish farmer has to make a declaration that he has separated all the proper tithes, or trumas and meisers, and done everything the way he's supposed to do it. And he recites a certain paragraph, which is printed here in the Torah, in our Seder, and this is known by the nickname that Chazal gave him, Vidui Meiser. So the question is, what do you mean vidui? Usually we associate vidui with confession. During the slichas and on Yom Kippur we say vidui, shamnu, bagadnu, gazalnu, al chet this and al chet that. That's usually vidui. Where's the vidui here? You're saying you did what you're supposed to do. In fact, the pasuk says, "Osisi kechol asher tzivisani." I did everything I was supposed to do. So why is that called vidui? Vidui usually means yisur. Vidui usually means when you do something that was wrong, something that wasn't good. You have to apologize for it and so on. But Rav Soloveitchik and others have suggested that it's perhaps based on one phrase in this paragraph. Osisi kechol asher tzivisani. Not osisi kol asher. So I did everything I was committed, but like kechol asher tzivisani. On one hand, I was pretty good. I did a lot of things right. I did things the right way, but it wasn't 100%. Osisi kichol asher tzivasoni. I did more or less like what I was supposed to do. And that's a little bit the notion of vidur. I'm confessing that even when I did things right, maybe it wasn't 100% right. Most of us, Baruch Hashem, we're not bad people. We all do averos, we all make mistakes, but overall, we try to do the best. We try to observe the mitzvahs, we try to daven properly, try to learn and get stuck and do chesed. And therefore, in a certain sense, we can come to Rosh Hashanah with a certain sense of simcha. Our friend is HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to recognize that overall, probably, I did a lot of things the right way, Baruch Hashem, during the past year. However, it's Osisi Kichol Asher Tzivasoni. We all have to be honest and recognize it wasn't exactly right. We didn't do everything exactly the right way. We did more or less. It's pretty good, Osisi Kichol Asher Tzivasoni. But the idea of Rosh Hashanah is also to remind us that there's room to improve. And therefore we read this Parshas Ki Savo, right before Rosh Hashanah. And our practice is the second to last Shabbos before Rosh Hashanah, to remind us that even though we can take stock and look at ourselves and say, Baruch Hashem, I did a lot of good things this past year, we should feel proud of those accomplishments. Nonetheless, there's always room for improvement. Osisi Kichol Asher Tzivasoni. So we come to Rosh Hashanah, we have a certain sense of confidence in our relationship and our friendship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. On the other hand, we recognize that there's a need to be a little bit concerned because maybe we didn't do everything right, and we have to commit ourselves to improve and to do even better, Be'ez Hashem, next year.